Welcome to In-Depth for a closer look at what is making mining headlines in the Americas. Coal miners in the U.S. Powder River Basin are keen on a potential new export facility on the West Coast. Mining Weekly Deputy Editor Liz Wayu joins me from Toronto to discuss this issue. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martin.
Let us talk about the background to this first. Why is there a need for a new port facility?
Okay, so basically if we just look in the broader picture of the coal industry worldwide, demand for coal, both metallurgical or steelmaking coal as well as thermal coal, which is used for power generation, really is being driven by Asia, as you know at the moment, led by China. And even though European and North American coal customers or demand is slowly starting to recover after the economic downturn, really China, Asia, Japan, India are the driving forces of the coal market at the moment. And so what we're seeing is really a shift in patterns of coal exports, of coal supply around the world, where before European customers really used to source their coal from South Africa, from South America, Colombia, a little bit from Australia. With the increasing demand from Asia, and particularly China for coal, more and more of the world's coal from these other places around the world is getting kind of caught up in this coal export tide that is all just flowing through into Asia. And so we really are seeing the picture change as time goes on through this year. And what that means is that customers in Europe, as they look to source their coal, are now having to start looking elsewhere because they're having to compete for the South African coal, for the Colombian, the Australian coals, all just get going into Asia. And so the European customers are now looking increasingly at places, not only the Colombia, but also the eastern United States. So coming back to the Powder River Basin, of course, that's not on the eastern United States. The Powder River Basin is a geological region, the biggest single source of coal in the United States, but it covers parts of the states of Wyoming and Montana, which is sort of in the north of the US, kind of west central. The Powder River Basin coal at the moment mainly goes into US utilities, so for power generation. But as more and more of the eastern US coal supply, that's the Appalachia, the West Virginia, as more of that is getting sent off to Europe and to Asia, the utilities in the eastern US are increasingly starting to look at bringing in coal from the PRB, from the Powder River Basin. So that's on the one hand an increasing source of demand for the PRB. And secondly, these companies that mine coal in the Powder River Basin are starting to say, well, look, if this is where the demand is, out there in Asia, demand from China, demand from India, Japan, Korea, let us look at the potential, and they are seeing that there is demand for their product. Look at the potential for shipping more and more coal through the West Coast and out into customers elsewhere in the world.
Is coal being exported from the Powder River Basin at the moment?
It is, but in very limited amounts. We're hearing, for example, Cloud Peak Energy, that was the company that was spun out by Rio Tinto last year, and it's actually the biggest pure play producer in the Powder River Basin at the moment. They're expecting to export, I think, 3 million tons of coal from their PRB mines this year, and then probably the same amount next year. The real constraint at the moment is really infrastructure, port infrastructure, to get that coal out. The biggest export facility on the west coast of North America, West Shore Terminals, that really has been a story of the last couple of months from companies that are already exporting coal. The Tech Resources, for example, they've actually had to relook at their sales forecasts for the latter quarters of this year, simply because of capacity constraints at West Shore Terminals. And so really, if these Powder River Basin companies want to look seriously at exporting significant volumes of their coal to elsewhere in the world, out of the West Coast, the real thing that they need to find is they need that big, significant coal export facility to come online and to allow that.
And how likely is it that a new port facility is going to be built?
Yeah, it's something that has been talked about for a while. There was a lot of buzz about it in 2008, obviously when the coal market was very strong just before the economic downturn. Things, everything quietened down a little bit. Companies were curtailing some capacity and no one was really looking at big expansions. But now that the industry is buzzing again, people are looking at ramping up capacity. It certainly is something that I think there is a lot of interest and a lot of excitement about in the region. We've heard Peabody Energy, that's the biggest US coal producer. They've got big surface mines in the Powder River Basin. And Peabody Energy has said that's really quite a high priority for them this year. They've actually identified potential sites for an export facility, and they're hopeful that maybe they can bring on a partner, potentially a customer in Asia that might be interested in participating in building some kind of facility, obviously, for the Chinese or the Asians that would benefit them because then they would have access to that coal. Cloud Peak Energy, their CEO, was just talking last week, and he said certainly, everyone's talking to everyone. There is a lot of interest, and Cloud Peak certainly would support a new facility, and they'd certainly benefit from it, he said. And basically his words were, it's not a pipe dream. It is going to happen. It's just a matter of timing. And then more recently, actually, interestingly, we've seen an Australian company that's looking to build or acquire mines in the Powder River Basin, and they've recently applied for permission to build or to renovate an existing facility and to create a new coal export facility going out of Washington. So it certainly seems like things are moving, and as the chief of Cloud Peak said, it's just a matter of when rather than if that the new port is going to be built.
Oh, thank you so much, Lizo. That's the show for today. Join me again for more news and insight on mining in the Americas. I'm Martin Joaquin in Johannesburg.